Thank you so much for coming out today. Today we are going to be speaking about a recent child predator takedown operation, as well as the street takeover incidents in Springfield this past weekend. Today, speaking on the child predator operation, we have Detective Albright. We also have Assistant Chief Brooke Wright and our own Chief Davis.
Thanks, Katie. We're absolutely committed to protecting our children in this community and tirelessly pursuing those who pursue them. And not only the threats that are easily seen, but those that are difficult to see. And for that, we use our experts. In a moment, I'm going to ask Detective Blake Albritton of our Major Crimes Bureau's Child Exploitation Unit to discuss the results of an operation that was conducted last week while kids were on spring break from school. And then he will share some safety information for our parents. And just know that these are regular operations and they're aimed at apprehending those online predators who are targeting minors. And as always, we ask anyone who knows about these cases with any information to contact our Major Crimes Bureau. Thank you. Detective Albritton.
Good morning. Last week, the Child Exploitation Unit, along with the Street Crimes Unit of Fairfax County, conducted a traveler operation targeting predators who were looking for children for sexual exploitation. Again, we conduct a few of these a year, and throughout the year, we're conducting day-on targeted cases. And we had our child exploitation unit detectives posing as minors using undercover personas that we've developed and targeting, again, applications and websites that we know predators are looking for children on. We arrested 5 individuals over the course of the operation, and we had 12 felony arrests in total. The first arrest was Stephen Morales of Woodbridge, Virginia. He was charged with attempted indecent liberties with a minor and solicitation of a minor. We arrested Carl Frey of Baltimore, Maryland, who was arrested for solicitation of a minor and indecent liberties with a minor, and he had pending charges in Baltimore for sexual-related offenses as well. Joseph Nandidam of Fairfax, Virginia, was charged with attempted indecent liberties and solicitation of a minor. Adil Chutai of Lorton, Virginia, was charged with solicitation of a minor. And then Brian Crawford of Baltimore, Maryland, was charged with 2 counts of solicitation of a minor and 3 counts of distribution of child pornography or child sexual abuse material. We still have some follow-up on some of these cases. These aren't just a one-day or one-week thing. Again, these chats can obviously take a long time. Sometimes they can take a couple hours. Sometimes they can take weeks or months, just depending on the target and what we're going for. So one of the things, and I think the most important reason we do this is obviously we want to protect our children from the predators that are out there. And one of the things we always try to tell parents is that any application or any website that a child has access to, there are predators on those websites. And that's why we target these applications that we see from our cases that we receive as detectives in our normal caseload to go after these predators. So one of the things that's important is just to make sure that parents are aware of what is out there and what they can do. One of the most important things is to make sure that parents are monitoring their child's online activity. We try to tell parents, especially with younger children, that nothing good happens on their phone after 8 or 9 o'clock when they're supposed to be in bed. So one of the best tips I think we can give is to have that charging cable where the phone or tablet's going to be charged in your bedroom, or in the parent's bedroom, so the kids don't have access to it. Because again, a lot of these cases that we see, these crimes and these children are getting on talking to these people at night when they're supposed to be asleep. Make sure you know your children's passwords. Make sure you have access to their phone. Make sure you're looking through that phone on a constant basis. I always tell parents, if you see 2 calculator apps on your child's phone, that one of them is probably hidden vault. So ask your child why they have a second calculator, because no kid has a second calculator these days on their app. And it's one of those things that every time we point that out, a parent sees it and goes, oh, well, there's something there. Be open with your children. Make sure they're open to you to talk to about this stuff if it does happen. One of the things we're seeing more and more often now are these sextortion cases where these adults posing as children are sending pictures and having these children send the pictures back to the adults, and then they're extorting them for money. If that happens, make sure you talk to your parents, make sure you talk to a counselor at school, and then contact us. If we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. One of the best resources we see is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC. contact NCMEC if you ever have a question as well, and they have all types of data they can provide in safety plans and preventions and things like that. And again, if anybody has any information, if anybody is seeing this online or has questions, please contact us and we will absolutely investigate it and do what we can with whatever case we get. So, any questions?
Any of these guys work in jobs that deal with children, that deal with youth by any chance?
On this operation, I believe one of the arrestees was a previous employee at a school. I don't think he worked at a school, but for a school system. Previously, he wasn't current, but we have seen it in the past. We had the operation in December where we arrested a teacher out of Texas that had traveled here to meet with what he believed to be a minor. So yeah, we absolutely get teachers, clergy, anybody that has, there are people that have access to children, but on this one, not specifically at this time. Yes, sir.
Two things. One, just a clarification on one thing you said. You said there's sort of some active investigating happening. Is that with these specific 5 cases or with other cases that you guys?
I would say there's follow-up on these cases, and we have investigations going on with other cases that we started last week and then previously as well that are still active.
What types of follow-ups with these specific cases?
I can't get into specifics on that.
I would like to think I sort of know how to use an iPhone, and the 2 calculators thing you said I've never heard of. So can you just expound a little bit about sort of maybe the ways that kids you've found are being a little bit more discreet with their phone? Like, can you explain the 2 calculators?
Sure. So you think of it, if you're on an iPhone, you have a hidden apps or a hidden folder that you can put your password in or your facial recognition, and it pops that up. Some of the calculator apps or other apps that are out there are vaults, the same as that hidden one, that aren't obvious. So instead of having that hidden vault that's just right on your images section in the iPhone, it's an app that's hidden by a calculator. So it's a vault that's hidden by a calculator, or it could be some other type of application. So sometimes when kids don't want their parents to see those or other people to see that or what they have on their phone, they're hiding them to where they're not obvious.
You mentioned these extortion cases. How often are you guys handling these kind of cases now?
So we handled about, the child exploitation unit last year handled about 1,000 cases. We had, I think, about 1,200 cyber tips. I don't know, we'll have to get back to you on the exact number of extortions, but they're happening kind of more often than we even realize, because a lot of them are underreported. Like every case we deal with, I think overall, sexual offenses overall are underreported. But I would say a couple we get in, and then if we have information that leads to someone here in the United States, we'll pass that information along that jurisdiction. A lot of them are overseas, and we'll use our partners at the FBI, and we work with the FBI's Child Exploitation Human Trafficking Task Force along with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and we'll pass that information along to them for follow-up if it's overseas.
We can get you some more numbers on that.
Kind of building off of that, those of us who spend too much time flipping through your guys' search warrants at the courthouse, I mean, we see warrant after warrant, a lot of child pornography related cases, but sexual crimes involving children. And I think the layperson has no idea the scope of crimes or potential crimes that are being perpetrated against kids as it relates to sex. So kind of building on Matt's question, I mean, you can talk a little bit about it, maybe how prevalent it is or it isn't. Like, how often is this happening? I mean, obviously, if you catch so many, there's more people out there, right?
Right. Yeah, we're absolutely not catching all of them. No, we wish we could, and that's why we do this job. There's 7 of us at this department, along with the crime analyst and supervisor, dedicated to just working online exploitation cases. But again, we worked probably close to 1,000 cases last year. I've been doing this for about 11 years now. It was the busiest year I've had. It's definitely growing, and the ages of these children and the victims of our cases are getting younger and younger. And I think that's just due to the access they have to the internet, and everybody has a phone now. Everybody's got a tablet. So that's why we encourage parents to make sure they're checking up on their children. But yeah, I think we did roughly like 60 residential search warrants last year. Like you were saying, you've gone through, and then all the search warrants we do for phones and other devices, the applications or the applications online that we do as well. So yeah, it's prevalent, and we can't get to every case. We try our best, but it's a problem nationwide.
Oh, of course, and given the nature of phones and computers, are a lot of these suspects, perpetrators? I mean, Are they people down the street, or is this happen? Like, are you looking for people? Are you finding people that might be victimizing a child in Fairfax, but they live somewhere else? Like, is that happening, or is it kind of in this area?
Both, yeah. And anything, yeah. Again, we had, and we send cases out to leads out to any, all across the country. That's one of the great things about having these task forces that we participate in. So if we have a victim here and the offender might be in California, we're going to go arrest that person in California, bring them back here to prosecute. If just so it depends on where that victim is and what kind of case we have, we'll send it out.
The crime would be charged and prosecuted where the victim lives, not where the perpetrator accessed the internet.
So not to get into too much, but the way the code reads in Virginia, we have the ability to prosecute where the offender resides or where the victim resides. So depending on just what the case is and the overall case, we kind of will decide on there from where we're going to prosecute.
Thank you.
Wanted to ask, you did this during spring break. I mean, are these guys often kind of on the ball enough that they target children more on spring break, or did you just do it because you knew kids would be home at this time?
Yeah, so some of it, again, we don't do it during all the holidays, so we do spread these out throughout the year. But when, and we go back, years that we've been doing these things, when we find that obviously the kids are at home, sometimes without parental supervision because parents are still at work during spring break. They do target that kind of information. Like when we're doing our chats, they will talk about school and things like that. And so I couldn't say every single person realizes that, but there absolutely are predators out there that realize what the breaks are and what this calendar is.
And getting to Drew's question, I mean, I noticed a couple of these guys are from Baltimore. Were they driving all the way from Baltimore to Fairfax County?
They both travel from Baltimore. That's right. Yep.
And what are there any particular apps where this goes on a lot that parents should be aware of?
Again, I found any application that a child has access to, we have found predators on that application. So I don't want to get into specifics about what ones we're using. But again, I think the parents they know what their children are on. They know the most popular ones, TikTok, Snapchat. Those are definitely the two most popular ones. I spoke at a school the other day and asked, and I think 99% of the children were on Snapchat and TikTok, whereas 5 years ago, they all had to raise their hand for Facebook. So those changed. Yeah, so as long as the parents are looking at the applications their kids are using, I think that's the most important thing.
Is there a particular age your guys are pretending to be the most that seems to attract these kind of folks the most, or is it all different ages?
All different ages. Yeah, I can't get specifics on exactly the ages, but we are using a variety of ages depending on, again, the case and what we're looking at for that.
I'm sure each case is different. Can you, just for parents, can you talk about the nexus of how the alleged predator reaches out to the child? How on average is the connection made? Is it chat rooms? Is it geolocating and finding? I don't know. Just can you give some insights as to how these conversations begin?
Yeah, it's all of the above. And again, I can't get into specifics just based on we have cases we're still working and going out there for. But it is all the above. There are geolocation things. There are again with Snapchat. There's quick ads, so people are just randomly chatting. We had a case years ago where we had multiple victims from one school, and there wasn't a known between the offender and the victims, but he just added 5 or 6 people from one school and attempted or did victimize those individuals. So some of it's geolocation, some of it's just throwing out a bunch of messages to different people and waiting for one person to respond. And again, it's definitely changed over the years about how they're targeting, but they keep up and they're trying to keep up a step ahead of us, right? So we ran into a person earlier this year that had communicated with other individuals, other predators about how to do these things. Here's how I would go about doing this. Here's how I meet children, and we definitely see that more often than not.
Going back to these extortion cases, you mentioned how victims are getting younger. Are the perpetrators as well getting younger?
Absolutely.
The presence of social media, we're talking about teens as well.
Yeah. So again, I don't have specific statistics on the age of them, but we are seeing more and more cyber tips, which are the tips we get from our electronic service providers through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That's a bulk of our cases when you see these search warrants that we're doing and our cases that are coming from. And we are seeing absolutely younger and younger people looking at child pornography or child sexual abuse material, and it's not a 15-year-old looking at 15-year-olds. It's a 15-year-old looking at toddlers and much younger ages. So that has become something that we've seen has been more prevalent over the last few years than it was, like I said, 10 years ago when I first started doing this.
Can you pinpoint to why?
I have ideas why. I can't. I think we see over sexualization in society, and this the access, and it kind of falls the same as the adults, where I think sometimes they see these things and they get tired of what they're looking at, and they go to a deeper and darker place. So I think that's happening at a younger age now.
Blake, it's obvious, but I want to hear you say it. How angry do these criminals make you?
Yeah, it's an interesting job, but it has to be done. So we have to kind of keep that aside and focus on what we have to do, which is to get them arrested and get them to jail as fast as we can and make the best case we can. Then we pass that along, obviously, to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to prosecute from there. But yeah, some make us angrier than others, but it definitely affects everybody up there that does this, just because it is a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to look at what we deal with every day.
Obviously, you prefer not to have to do it.
Yes, yeah, I wish, yeah, it's not a good thing that these cases are going up, and I think there were 33 million cyber tips last year worldwide, and and it's increasing exponentially. So yeah, but yeah, this is one of the jobs, I guess, with everything we do. We wish we didn't have to do this job, but it has to be done. All right, thank you.
Like Detective Albritton said, these are absolutely just frustrating cases to have to work. But I'm grateful, and we're all grateful for the commitment of these detectives who put their heart into it. But it is absolutely, to your point, Drew, this is a conversation that everybody needs to be having in their home. We do believe there's underreporting. Some kids might be embarrassed that they've sent pictures and don't want to tell their parents what they've done, and then they're being extorted and victimized. So we definitely need those conversations to be taking place. It's absolutely a team effort, and we don't have people to catch every predator out there. So please assist us and spread the word amongst yourselves as well. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Chief Davis.
Okay, thank you, Chief Wright, and thank you, Detective Albritton, wherever he went. He's very talented. He's talented. That whole group is very talented. So we're gonna switch gears and talk about something that in the not too distant past, the springtime in the National Capital Region would bring about car shows. And you've all probably personally attended car shows. They're often permitted. They often generate a lot of community interest. I remember as a young kid, my own father would take me to car shows in the spring, and I very much look forward to, back then, looking at 1957 Chevys. But times have changed, and while those endeavors still happen, and we encourage them to continue to happen because they generate a lot of community enthusiasm, they're permitted, they're done in cooperation with commercial shopping centers and parking lots, and those are all good things. And I'm not here to talk about that, but I think it's important for me to mention that we, law enforcement, FCPD, realize that those things have existed for eons, and they're perfectly part of our society. What's not a perfect part of our society is these street takeovers. They're also referred to as bangers. I'm sure there's a couple other descriptions, but for the sake of this conversation, street takeovers, where, as it turns out, and this affects the entire National Capital Region, Prince George's, Montgomery, D.C., Prince William, Fairfax, Loudoun County in particular, these groups of individuals who wear masks and they communicate with each other in various discrete sites generate interest for car enthusiasts to gather at particular locations, typically late at night, early morning, for the purpose of utter chaos and disorder. There's nothing neighborly about what they do. They do donuts, they drive at high rates of speed, they endanger the lives of themselves, they endanger the lives of their other enthusiastic and masked supporters, and now they act in a criminal nature far, far too often. So I'm going to show you a couple videos, and we're going to talk about what we have done since last Sunday morning, late Saturday night, early morning hours of Sunday at about 3 a.m. It's not lost on me that several hours before that, Fairfax County Police Department sent a contingent of our own police officers from our motor squad up to NYPD to bury a cop in New York who was killed in the line of duty. So fast forward several hours later, while our own cops are still on the way back from New York, I believe we narrowly escaped a line of duty death scenario of our own because one of our own officers was surrounded by a bunch of masked, tough guy wannabe thugs who surrounded her car and acted in a criminal manner in a way that I'll tell you is never going to happen again in Fairfax County. So let's play a couple of those videos and then we'll talk about what our detectives have done since then and about what our posture is going to be regarding these street takeovers going forward.
I'm going to be out with a large group of individuals doing donuts in a parking lot behind Electronic. I've got a huge crowd. They're hitting my car. I need units to expedite. I've got individuals.
600 Alpha, multiple people blocking my cruiser, banging my windows.
Direct, attention on units, channels restricted.
I have a huge crowd around my car. They've all got masks on. They're beating on my cruiser.
Attention on units.
Okay, let's pause right there. So our officer, and she's very young, she's been on just a couple years, exhibited a ton of grace under pressure in that very volatile scenario. It's important to note that this was not a call for service. This was a police officer out at about 3 o'clock in the morning proactively policing our neighborhoods and our communities. And she came upon this street takeover, and you see what happened when she drove around the back side of this parking lot to investigate it. When this happened, our detectives immediately were dispatched and began their investigation. But while they were responding to the scene to begin their criminal investigation, resources, police officers from throughout Fairfax County's 409 square miles were deployed en masse to this location, en masse. So what does that mean for residential and business communities? It means you didn't have any cops protecting your neighborhoods, your communities, your businesses, because these criminals diverted all of our attention to handle an attack on one of our police officers. And that's exactly what this was. You probably hear some thuds when you watch those videos. You've probably seen these videos already on social media. Those are perpetrators wearing masks as cowards trying to open her car doors. And I believe that they fully intended to drag her out of that car. Thankfully, they didn't get into the car. She escaped unharmed, and we're very grateful for that. So as we put up, our detectives, like I said, immediately dispatched, and this is important for not only the media and the community, but it's important for our own police officers to hear. I don't know if the president of our union is here, Steve Monahan, but it's important for all of our cops to know that when this happens, it's unacceptable. It's not going to happen again. I want to put a fine point on that. This is not going to happen again in Fairfax County. This is one young man, 20 years old. His name is Dylan Heckard. He's from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. His criminal charges have not yet been served. We're working with the jurisdiction in Pennsylvania to serve them as I speak. He's being criminally charged with abduction, assault on a law enforcement officer, obstruction of justice, and wearing a mask in public. So that's him wearing the mask right there. A second person who's not yet arrested but is working on turning himself in is Ronel Uria Hernade. He's 18 years old. He lives in Catonsville, Maryland. He is being criminally charged with assault on a law enforcement officer, hit and run with injury, speeding to elude, all felonies, and driving without a license. So we should have him in custody today as well. There is a third person who's been charged and released on a traffic summons. Carlos Martinez, 18, of Woodbridge. He's been charged with reckless driving. Some of the speeds of these of these takeover motorists, bangers they call themselves, reached well over 100 miles an hour this night as they fled from the parking lot. So he's being charged via criminal summons on a traffic offense. And then there's a fourth person, and leave that slide up. There's a fourth person who we're not identifying because he's 17. He's a juvenile. He lives in Arlington. His pending charges are disorderly conduct and abduction. And abduction in so much as he wasn't allowing our police officer to freely move. So those criminal charges are pending. So a lot of work by FCPD detectives and FCPD traffic crash investigators assigned to our Operational Support Bureau. A lot of work has happened since Sunday because this is intolerable in any society. And Sir Robert Peel rather said many years ago, 1820 something, that the police exist to address crime and disorder. This is both crime and disorder, and I don't know anyone who I come into contact with who has an appetite for this to continue in the National Capital Region. We have to do more to identify these criminals. They're not enthusiasts. They're not young people exercising their First Amendment. They're criminals. They're armed. You can see in these two photographs that they're armed with assault-style long guns. Thankfully, they weren't discharged at anyone. I don't believe they were discharged at all, but they were certainly displayed in a manner that's threatening to a whole lot of people. How many of these folks are bad actors versus how many are just going along with the herd because they lack direction in their young lives? I don't know. Typically, it's a smaller group within a larger group that acts in a criminal, destructive nature like this, and it's our commitment to our own cops and to our community that we're going to identify these people and work with our prosecutors to hold them accountable. We can't talk about this enough. This is not a springtime rite of passage anywhere in the National Capital Region. And I'm proud of the fact, and I've been in this region my entire life, that the coordination between law enforcement agencies, between fusion centers, between detectives is at an all-time high. We play games of cat and mouse with these folks on a routine basis. We're pretty good at identifying where they're going to be. Not always, because they speak very cryptically about what their intentions are with these takeover events, these banger events, and they operate in a secret society. And that secret society deserves our undivided attention because this can't go on. So I'll pause here and take any questions. Tom?
Chief, do you believe that's the underage guy from Arlington with the gun, or do we not know who that is?
No, he's not. We do not know who he is. And thank you for pointing that out. For anyone who sees these pictures and recognizes these masked gunmen, we would certainly appreciate knowing who those folks are.
And do you believe this is the same group that gathered in Prince William earlier in the evening?
Yeah, we believe that it was. They'll typically go from place to place. We have a pretty large commitment from our traffic division on weekends who, again, use police and community and law enforcement, public safety resources to chase these people around. And we were doing it that very night, and we found them. Again, it wasn't a call for service that brought this to our attention. It was an alert patrol officer doing her job at 3 o'clock in the morning, and she found them. Yes, sir.
How unusual is it for the response to a police officer to be surrounding them as opposed to scattering?
It's unusual and unacceptable. These folks know that they're engaging in illegal criminal activities, so typically they would disperse. And I think that's the norm. And I think that's a healthy response to a police presence when you're committing a crime, for God's sake. But to stay where you are and to then aggressively and criminally approach a police officer in a uniform in a marked patrol car and surround that car and damage the car and attempt to yank the rear license plate off the car and try the door handles to get to her, and I believe in an effort to drag her out of the cruiser and harm or kill her, that's unacceptable. This is not normal. So we, again, collectively, PGPD, Montgomery County, MPD, Prince William, Loudoun Sheriffs, Fairfax County, Alexandria, Arlington, we're all dealing with the same issue and the same cast of characters. They know jurisdictional boundaries, so they will typically, once they're chased out of one jurisdiction, they will not relocate in the same jurisdiction where they're chased from. They'll go to a jurisdiction that they haven't been at on a particular night in hopes of local law enforcement not knowing where they're going.
Is there a particular
Right.
group behind these takeovers?
It's a large group of young men, typically young men from throughout the region. I mean, you see, one of the people we've criminally charged is from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, another one from Catonsville, Maryland, up in Baltimore County. So they exist throughout the greater DMV and beyond into Pennsylvania. But it's again, something that has law enforcement's attention, and we need to work with legislators and others going into next legislative session to do more to impact the owners of these cars. So in the event that we can capture a license plate of one of these folks engaging in criminal misconduct, unless we can identify the person behind the wheel, we can't typically charge with traffic and other offenses. So we need to start holding the owners of these vehicles better accountable when their vehicles that they purchase and it's registered in their name to them are involved in these takeover events.
What else can police do moving forward to, I know you say identifying the cryptic messages can be tough, anything else that can be done to thwart this?
Well, Matt, one thing that we're doing effective several days ago is we're adding a civil disturbance unit response to these scenes. So as opposed to jeopardizing one officer by herself at 3 o'clock in the morning and expecting her to confront a crowd like that, I think in days gone by, that crowd would disperse. But they're not dispersing as much as they used to. So we have to add a civil disturbance unit component that's readily available to respond to these scenes with our patrol officers to do so safely and in a way that ensures that the good guys are going to prevail. We're not going to be caught in a situation again where it's one of us versus dozens of them who want to do us harm.
Knowing how they reacted, protocol moving forward, do officers have to maybe stay in the patrol car? I understand one driver struck an officer as they were leaving.
The officer who was struck was on foot, and the car that made contact with him did not stay, hence the hit and run offenses, and took off at a very high rate of speed, well over 100 miles an hour, and we've since identified him and charged him with traffic offenses. It's a very dangerous scenario, and you'll see the crowds will remain static as they allow these vehicles to do donuts around them. For the life of me, I don't understand it. It's certainly risky behavior. It's criminal behavior, and it creates this mob mentality amongst a group of young men who now think, because they're wearing masks and because a large number of them are probably intoxicated or using some type of narcotic, to engage in this group gang-like mentality, and people can get hurt or worse, and we got to address it in a better way.
This may just be a peripheral issue, but is it feasible charging wearing a mask in public? Is that a charge that you can?
It is a charge, and we've charged the first one. Dylan Heckert has been charged with wearing a mask in public. I know of the ones that we've spoken about today, he's one of, and there he is. And that's him wearing a mask, and he's demonstrating his feelings about public safety and government in the other photograph. But certainly wearing a mask is a criminal offense in public.
Chief, you've used the word cowards, you've used the word thugs. I am sensing that there's obviously some real frustration and anger from you about this. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but can you just kind of characterize your overall sentiment to this?
It's thuggish behavior by young men who should otherwise be living lives that put them in a position to be successful members of our community. But they're choosing, because I imagine that they started as car enthusiasts several years ago, they're choosing to take their passion for cars and they're adding elements of criminality to it, and they're endangering our community, they're endangering our law enforcement, they're endangering themselves when they act in such a destructive and criminal nature. It's beyond unacceptable behavior, and I think we can't grow used to seeing this every Monday morning from now until the fall. This is not normal behavior. It can't be tolerated. This isn't boys being boys. These are young men acting in a criminal nature. They're engaging in thuggish behavior wearing masks, and they're assaulting police officers
Is this a weekly thing, monthly?
weekly,
Has it-
several times a weekend.
Has it ever been this out of control before?
I've never seen it to that degree. I've never seen, in this particular circumstance, I certainly have the experience of a riot in my past, but I've never seen a car takeover event, a banger event, where the police officer was surrounded and the criminals surrounding her car, like in this particular instance, were pulling on her door handles. She really remained calm. She was able to articulate on the radio exactly where she was, exactly what was going on. And again, all the cops who went there, and we're going to go when something like that happens, they're no longer in your communities. And that's something that everyone should be bothered by.
Is there any? Sorry. How was she able to get away? Was it when the other officers arrived, or?
Ultimately, I think the additional sirens, the additional arriving police officers, you saw that one young man spend a good deal of time trying to pull her rear tag off of her car, but ultimately she remained calm. I mean, imagine the press conference if she had accelerated, or if she had put the car in drive or reverse. It'd be a far different press conference. But she was able to make a decision in the heat of a moment to communicate where she was, communicate what was going on, and ask for help. And thankfully, in the meantime, she wasn't hurt or worse herself.
Can you provide any details? I was told the one man who was arrested, Carlos Martinez, actually hit a police squad car head on. Can you give details? Was he trying to get away at the time?
He was trying to get away. Yeah, we can get you additional details. I know his offenses are traffic only. That's Charles Martinez out of Woodbridge, reckless driving, etc. And then we have another person charged with hit and run. That's Ronald Uria Hernandez. We'll break all these charges down for you.
Were any other officers injured besides the one who was hit on foot?
No, thankfully not. And to watch that video and to have our own police officers and even those engaged as participants or onlookers. And I'll say this, there were more onlookers at that event than there were participants in criminal misconduct. But the participants in criminal misconduct, particularly these gun-toting bad guys here, they are responsible for a very chaotic, dangerous event that could have been a lot worse at the end than it actually was.
Are these events peculiar at all to this region, or is this something all?
No, up and down the East Coast, really, New York, Boston, Philly, these events tend to increase in the springtime when the warmer weather hits. I know, and I've been other places, and we do it in Fairfax as well. We try to use our helicopter to identify where these vehicles come from before they get involved in this chaos, where they go after they're involved in this criminally chaotic activities. So we use helicopters, we use cameras, we use license plate readers. There's more technology available to police officers, particularly in the National Capital Region, than ever before. So that's why I'm able to stay here 3.5 days after this chaotic event and announce that we've criminally charged 3 people and we've issued a 4th person traffic summonses. So without the benefit of technology, and some of the technology, we're thankful to these onlookers for providing their identities and their whereabouts and their involvement in this crime because they posted on social media themselves. So we're grateful for that as well. So, but again, the commitment that we have is to stop it before it happens. So I don't want to stand here again and talk about something like this happening in Fairfax County. I want to be on the front side of this, and we have a strategy and a game plan to do just that, and we'll be able to do it because we're working with our other law enforcement partners and our fusion centers. Our fusion centers, the MCAC in Maryland and the NIVRIC in Fairfax County, are instrumental, constantly detecting announcements of where these folks are going to be on a particular weekend. Some of the announcements are fictitious and they're meant as distraction announcements, but there's some really talented analysts who run this stuff down every day. They just don't start this work on a Friday afternoon. They're doing it all week.
Can you elaborate more on that strategy? You mentioned websites. What are those websites?
Yeah, I don't know that I know the websites off the tip of my tongue to identify them, but they're involved in some dark sites, dark websites, and they communicate with each other. And we have analysts who are able to find their way into those places. The strategy that I think I want to articulate to our community and to those who are contemplating this type of criminal behavior in the future is you're not just going to see police officers and police cars anymore when you're engaged in this type of activity. You're going to see our civil disturbance unit, because that's exactly what this is, a civil disturbance event. And we're going to have ample police officers at these scenes to ensure that these activities stop before they result in what you see in the pictures in front of you.
Like in uniform at the scene, or like the?
Well, I don't want to go over my ops plan with you, Matt, but they're going to be available on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, the nights these events typically take place, so we can reach out, and I'm just kidding with you, that we can reach out and put them into play. Because no longer should a police officer be by herself at 3 o'clock in the morning and thankfully survive.
How important is it now that the Commonwealth's attorney really throws the book and goes after these folks as much as possible?
We've been working with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. They absolutely see the seriousness of this. And, it's the criminal justice system, right? So it just can't be the cops upset at a press conference. And I certainly am disappointed, and I'm upset that we're in a really bad situation. Thankfully, we weren't. But all the pieces of the criminal justice system, everyone. So the prosecutors, and they're aligned with us on our commitment to prevent this from happening. The judges, by the time these young men end up in someone's courtroom, they're not going to look like that, right? They're not going to come in waving their guns when they stand behind the defendant's table. They're going to have a far different story to tell, but they can't escape their participation in a criminally chaotic event like this one. So I think we all have to remember that the criminal justice system, the weight of the criminal justice system has a role to play in stopping these trends. This hasn't always existed, and it doesn't need to exist in perpetuity. We have to do something about it now. Thank you all.
Thank you.